If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Disclaimer. The Organic Matrix is a platform intended to give a voice to people of all walks of life. This podcast is not intended to be used for influence or to be used as medical advice. Hey there! Thank you for joining us today on the Organic Matrix. Today we're going to be speaking to somebody who has a ton of life experience, Ron. Ron Taylor is our guest, and he's a mindset consultant. I met him working with Live Ultimate, the wellness brand that we both represent. Ron, what are a few words that describe who you are?
Energetic, young at heart, full of spirit, free thinking, thinking outside the box, always loving, caring, helping people. I want to serve people. I want everybody to feel what I feel. I want, what I have, I want everybody to have, so, there's no reason why, no matter where you come from or what's going on in your life at this time, there's no reason why we all can't be happy, abundant, healthy, wealthy, prosperous, and living our best lives. There's no reason why anybody can't do that. So, that's how I would describe myself.
Ron shares with us how he found himself through evolution and entrepreneurship.
Honestly, like I've evolved, recently, the last year or so. I've totally recreated my life. So I come from that 9 to 5 kind of world to live in like being my own boss and running my own business, and like what I put into it is what I get out of it. So how I would introduce myself as, I am in the business of helping people getting from where they are to where they want to go and living a thriving, fulfilling life.
So were you always so helpful?
I was raised that way. Yeah. Always giving, caring, and, doing things without expectation, acts of kindness and things like that, and just being generous, and just, that kind of the village mentality, I guess, you know what I mean? Like old school, the neighborhoods helped each other, the barn raisings, stuff like that. That's the environment I was raised in. Like you were hauling in hay, I'd come over and give you a hand hauling in the hay, or you needed a hand, stacking firewood or something. I would, that's just the way I was raised. So
That's sick. I love that mindset. I come from New York, so I didn't really grow up with that. It was more like it's weird growing up in New York and like having every ethnicity present in my environment, and then having our parents like almost heavily shelter us. So I didn't really grow up with the mindset of helping out in their community. So when I hear people have that experience being brought up, it really sheds light on where it brings us in the future as adults. So where did you grow up, Ron?
I grew up in Connecticut in a rural environment. You know, we had like an RFD address, which means a Royal Federal Delivery. So it was a small town. When we first moved into this one town where I spent most of my life, there was only probably 6,000 people, so kind of everybody knew everybody or whatever, you know what I mean? It was like, I think one traffic light, kind of thing, you know. Um, and if you wanted where I live to go like down to a store or something, like walking or on a bike was down a hill like a mile and a half away, to get to somewhere. Then of course you had to go the mile and a half back up the hill to get home. So yeah, um, it wasn't nothing like the inner city life or whatever. Definitely a different mentality and stuff. And when I grew up too, like hitchhiking was a thing and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I came from. But both parents present, and mom was a full-time house mom, and I have three other siblings. The background of like that environment, it was on the surface, it was, typical like Brady Bunch or something, whatever, or what was the other one? Leave It to Beaver or something like that, the Cleavers, that kind of thing. But it goes more in depth, of course, like everybody. What you see on the surface is one thing, but overall, it was a good environment, neighborly, friendly, and people would stop by or you would stop by and like help people out and stuff. I know in the inner city it's a lot different where you kind of got blinders on and like, oh, did you say something to me or whatever. It's like it's not very friendly or whatever.
Yeah, it's so different. But I always like the idea of the type of community you're describing, because my family comes from like the LGBT side. So a lot of the people that I consider family are like longtime family friends. And that's what I love about the way I was brought up, because it wasn't just exclusive to family. I had like people who were my mom's best friends that were even more reliable than sisters, like more reliable than cousins and aunts. So I wish for a future where we can like be in an environment where we can let our guard down like that and like treat everybody like family. And like
Yeah.
it sounds like that's like you're a part of your mission, right? Like showing people that hospitality isn't, something that only blood relatives can give. Like it's a common decency that you can share with others and inspire others to have themselves.
Well, yeah, speaking into that in that regard was my neighborhood. I lived on a block that was like a mile around, and primarily everybody was related to each other. We were like the outsiders, like, oh, the new guy on the block or whatever. And we just we bought the land that we bought was like this little 1 acre property that the kids used to play in, like it was their woods, and like they had little forts and stuff set up in it or whatever. So when we moved in there, like we destroyed their like little playground, I guess, or whatever. But we needed a place to live. But the primarily everybody knew everybody, like they were all related, cousins and uncles and things like that, and a couple different families, but they all knew each other. Plus they had been there for many years. And here we are moving in like as an outsider. So there was an adjustment there, but it all worked out because there was like block parties and things like that, and then joined like Cub Scouts. I was always a scout or whatever, and involved with that kind of stuff. So there was that sort of community aspect. And then speaking into my vision, yes, my big vision is bringing unity back into community to get people to love and trust each other, because that's what we're here for as human beings. We are beings because we know how to be, you know what I mean? Like as far as all the rest of the animal kingdom, they go on, they're perfectly at home in their environment. They go on their intuition and their instinct, and they know how to survive. But as a being, we have choices, and we can like be and do whatever, because we have that extra 6 higher faculties. to, you know, think with intuition and memory and, you know, all the different things that we use. That so bringing the unity back into community, where it starts with me by loving myself and caring about what I do, and like walking around with a smile and like, you know, just being all prideful and like helping people and like being kind, and you know, and that just, that energy just flows outward. So, and I am blessed with this technology and the things that I do now. I'm interacting with people all over the world. I was on a practice session with a lady from Belgium yesterday, and she was an ER doctor, and now we just started talking, and we're totally aligned, like the same vision. And somebody sent me a video this morning about how this is all because of the technology, and we're able to connect with people all over the world with this like-minded same thing, like you and me being here, and Randy, and you know, the rest of us, we're all connected because of this technology. And that's such a beautiful thing. Like if I was living on the block or whatever, that thought would only go so far, you know? So I think our future, and as I've heard it said, like the new earth or whatever, is definitely, as we become awake and people are waking up and seeing this, they realize that we need to have that unity in community and bring everybody together.
When I was listening to Ron talk about bringing unity into community, the image I got in my mind was the idea of trust. Trusting that the environment and the community that I'm growing up in or bringing children into is going to be safe and thriving for their development. I'm grateful that there's people in the world keeping harmony in mind for mankind. Our next episode, we will continue to learn how Ron found his way out of the 9-to-5 hustle. When you were saying that, like the first thing that came to mind was like how, like, yeah, you're right. Like when we're exposed to other people like around our block, it's kind of like satiation. Like we kind of lose the gratitude and awareness of like having another human being like in close access. And that's one thing I do appreciate about this technology. It's like that we can learn from people from all over the world. And the first thing that comes to mind is like if people can be less attached to what they know, like, and have more an openness to figuring out why somebody would practice or believe in something they don't know of yet. Like religion, like I've read the Torah, the Bible, and I'm currently reading the Quran. And I have a background in like studying Buddhism and Hinduism. And there's like a verse in the Quran that says God came down and spoke his religion in all different languages. So like when I hear that as like a modern human being, I'm thinking like, well, if we were to like have a message that's to the core the same and to bring it to people all over the world, their different cultural beliefs from their environment, from their survival, their history, would paint the same picture with different colors. And if we could, as humanity, use this technology to break down barriers of attachment of what we thought, it would be beautiful to see a world where we can just be one human race and like have respect for other people's culture, have respect for people's religion, like ancestral beliefs, because sometimes we get so attached to protecting these beliefs that make us who we are that it causes war. And like hopefully by the time the ETs come down here, like we're all on the same page so that we can come as a collective to them. But that's definitely like a whole nother level.
That's a whole nother conversation. But as far as the first part of what you were saying, is the human race as a human being. We are all the same. We are all connected. And like you said, there's different cultures, the paradigms, the backgrounds. This is what they grew up to believe. But the thing is, it's all about ignorance. And that's what causes the wars, ignorance and the fear. So right now, our current situation in the world, this has not happened. This is not the first time this has gone on. I don't mean as far as the pandemic, but as far as the control of the masses through fear. And it's been through that way throughout history. So, and they're playing us from one to the other. Like, during the early, through racism and, the slaveries and all that stuff, those kinds of things, like there was ignorance, like, because you were a different color on your skin or whatever, and like technically when you say black is like the absence of all color, and nobody is like, like this is like pure black. I haven't never seen a human being that looks like that, right? They're not black. And I'm not white. Like if I was white, I would be, pure white. Like I'd look like a ghost, right? If I was white. So we all have a little color or hue to our skin. So we're not black and white. We are human beings. And to get people educated and to understand, to see things from that perspective is where the unity is going to take place. Right now, people are so, like under the pandemic, like, oh my God, if somebody coughed, like, oh, you better get tested, you got COVID.
Can there be a future where we all identify as one race? And if so, what kind of achievements can we achieve with world peace? Like, so in essence, what I'm trying to say is we like in human nature, what makes us so intelligent is that we're pattern building creatures, and we stereotype things so that we can organize ideas, and that's how we advance. And that's why there's so many history books, and why like technology is blown up in the last 100 years. But that same natural response that we have is what causes racism, is what causes prejudice. It's our nature of picking up patterns and stereotyping. Like I know that when I was growing up, I had bad experiences with racism because I'm mixed. So nobody knew what race to categorize me in. So I got like negative feedback from different kinds of races. And as I was growing up, I stereotyped them, and I was like, oh, well, this race is going to treat me like this because of how I look like. And that's like a part of the whole problem. But as I grew older, I realized that it's a fear mentality, and it's like a primitive mentality of just trying to be safe, where it's like you want to pick up a pattern, put it in a box so that you can try to control it. But the reality is every single person is different based off of their beliefs, what they grew up with, their environment. So if we can spread mindfulness into the youth and even people who are like older, there could be so much more peace. Because if we start analyzing, like judging things based off of the human nature, then we'll see that a lot of our fears and anxieties and a lot of the things we suffer with are things that we're attached to. And if we can learn how to let those things go, who knows how far we can be if we actually stopped attacking people for having different beliefs and we actually adopted them, or at least respected them and say, you can believe what you believe and I believe what I believe, but I still have love for you. If we can evolve like that, who knows how technology will grow? Because we have like people in different countries who have such advanced technology. If we can all come together then there's no limits. The veil of social stigmas. What Ron touches on next is thought-provoking.
It's not always what things are not always what they seem to be. And then through fear and ignorance, people are not educated on, you could take the same two people that, as a child and raise them like yourself or myself or something, and you're going to totally love whoever, you know what I mean? But you take two different people, I call it the Hatfield-McCoy syndrome, like you grow up, as soon as you're born, you're like, you hate those Hatfields or whatever, you know what I mean? Or you hate the blacks or you hate the whites or whatever it is, and you're stuck in that. And then your whole life is like, oh, they're terrible or whatever. But the bottom line is there's ignorant people and there's good, loving, caring people on both sides in all races. I mean, there's only one race, but I mean in all cultures. We all got our bad people and our good people, That's what it boils down to. So it's ignorance and fear and learning to educate people and, like it's okay to love one another. Like you could take, a child, if they were born an American, born here, but you took that baby and you raised it in China, it's not going to know it was an American. It is going to be, and it's going to know the culture of where it's living. It's going to speak that language. It's going to eat that food. It's going to love that. It's going to know those people, as a child. Like I think the Jungle Book's a good example. The boy in the jungle, right? He's like, he didn't know, we don't know what we don't know. And if you look at things in that perspective, then, and realize that we're all connected, that's what we need to educate people like us that are like-minded, and we think on a higher frequency and a higher level of awareness, and we see the picture, we see what's going on. Now we just need to come together, people like us need to come together and get this, and it's happening more and more. As the more people that wake up, the more you're going to see more of this.
Amen. And that Ron and I dive into the human condition. That's what I believe in too. And it boils down to mindfulness, right? Like the more mindful we can be about our human nature, the more we can not be victims to our nature. Like what I've noticed during my journey is that, there's like two selves, at least in my experience. There's the self where we can look at ourselves like an arrow point view, like astrally, and look at our own behaviors and analyze where the source of those behaviors come from and if they're truly serving us. But what I see is a lot of people are living in like, maybe I would say it's like 3D and then like 4D. Like the 3D is where like they're only focused on their duty and what they're used to and like patterns. And so it's like when I'm living in my patterns, I see that there's a lot of reactionary responses. And if we could step back, like when I speak to people who are not very religious, like agnostic people, like they think that the Bible was like meant to be taken literally, or like these religious texts are meant to be taken literally. And then they even look at organized religion and how they behave and like think that like, oh, that's all spiritual people, that's all religious people. But in reality, if we look at things the way it really is and get grounded, and we like look back at like biblical beliefs and say, oh, well, those are people from like 500 BC. Like these are like ancient people who don't have the flexibility and knowledge that we do, that only have limited amount of language to really talk about what they're witnessing. It speaks a way different story. If you can relate to the story being told and you want to hear more about Ron's experience in our matrix, follow our podcast. We'll be back soon on part 2 of Ron Taylor's Matrix.